The stars above were quiet, and the dying moon floated like a lonely bone in the black sea of space. A Terran dropship broke through the thin grey clouds, its engines whispering low, leaving silver trails behind. The human crew inside stared through the glass at the cracked surface below. It looked dead, broken, forgotten, but the strange pulse in their sensors said something was alive down there, something big. The team leader gave no speech, no orders. They had all felt the same chill when the first signal came through the deep space relay. A single low frequency that shook the air. It wasn't just noise, it was a roar, a deep ancient sound that made every machine hesitate for a second, like the universe itself held its breath. The dropship landed with a soft thud. The dust rose in a slow grey wave. Their boots sank slightly into the cold ground as the ramp opened, and the wind carried a smell that no one could name. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything they had trained for. But no one moved back. They stepped forward. The moon was silent except for that faint vibration under their feet. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and steady. One of the soldiers crouched down and pressed a gloved hand to the ground. The vibration traveled up his arm and into his chest like a warning. The commander raised a hand, signaling silence. Even the wind seemed to obey. For a moment, the only sound was their breathing through the suits. The scanner operator whispered that the signal was growing stronger. Something deep under the cracked crust was moving. Something big enough to shake the moon itself. The crew checked their weapons. No one said a word. They didn't need to. Every soldier there had survived worse. On worlds where the air burned and the soil tried to eat them alive. Humanity didn't fear darkness. They were born in it. Suddenly the ground gave a small shiver. Dust rolled across the rocks. A low growl rose through the earth like a drum. The roar followed. It started soft but grew fast, shaking the helmets, shaking the ship, shaking their hearts. It was a roar older than history, a sound that didn't just fill the air, it filled their bones. The alien species watching through hidden orbiting probes saw the humans freeze. They thought the humans were scared. They thought wrong. The crew stood still, not from fear but from calculation. They were listening, counting, waiting for the rhythm of the sound. Hunters did not run when the beast roared. Hunters waited. Red lights flashed on the scanner displays. The creature was massive, buried beneath layers of rock, but it was coming up. One step at a time, like a mountain waking from sleep. The commander whispered through the comm, not to retreat, but to hold. The beast was coming to them. They wanted it to. In the orbit above, a Terran fleet was silent. Their warships like black knives hidden in the dark. No one outside Earth knew they were there. No one knew that this mission wasn't exploration. It was bait. A soldier lifted a drone into the air. It hovered, its sensors glowing like a blue eye. The image that came through was blurry at first. Then the ground cracked open. A hot, thick mist poured out of the gap. The drone's lens shook from the heat. And then they saw it, a shape rising from the deep. A long curved horn, sharp like the edge of a blade. A chest covered in black molten armor, eyes like burning stars. The beast rose slowly, as if it had all the time in the universe. Its roar hit again, louder, deeper, breaking through the comm like thunder in a tunnel. Some of the alien observers in orbit pulled back their fleets already. They had seen monsters before, but not like this. The humans didn't run. They didn't even flinch. They closed their formations. The commander stood at the front, his shadow stretching across the broken ground. "Mark it," he said quietly. The targeting drones locked on. Hidden panels on the dropship slid open, revealing heavy turrets glowing blue. The beast tilted its massive head, sniffing the air, as if trying to understand these small creatures who refused to kneel. The pulse under their feet grew stronger. The creature took another step forward. Its claws sliced through stone like soft mud. But the humans didn't move back. One of the soldiers whispered, "It's testing us." The commander answered, "Then let it learn." For a moment everything was still. No one blinked. No one breathed. Even the stars seemed to stop moving. The beast let out one final earth-cracking roar, a challenge that echoed into the cold of space. Any other species would have turned their ships and fled, but humans weren't any other species. The soldiers lifted their weapons, calm, steady, synchronized like a single heartbeat. In the commander's eyes, there was no fear, only quiet fire. Above, the Terran warships adjusted their position, their cannons warming silently in the dark. Down on the surface, the crew tightened their grip, waiting for the exact moment to strike. The beast's breath filled the air with heat, making the sky shimmer. The humans didn't step back. They stepped forward. Somewhere far away, the Galactic Council watched the live transmission. They expected panic. They expected retreat. But all they saw was the stillness of humanity facing a nightmare with steady hands. It wasn't courage. It was something colder, older, a promise buried in human bones. The beast roared one last time, and the humans answered with silence. That silence was heavier than war. It was the silence before the storm. It was the moment the galaxy realized, humanity doesn't run, humanity hunts. The ground trembled like a drumbeat as the creature's roar faded into the cold night air. The humans didn't back away. They moved forward slowly, forming a tight circle around the landing zone. Their boots pressed into the cracked surface, leaving firm prints as if they were marking their territory. The mist from the open ground thickened, swirling around their legs like a living thing. In the distance, the broken hills seemed to breathe with the beast. The commander's voice came through the calm, low and calm. Positions. It wasn't a shout. It didn't need to be. Every soldier knew their place. Drones rose into the air like silent ghosts, their blue lights scanning the ground ahead. Far below, the signal on the sensors spiked again. The creature was moving fast now, straight toward them, like it wanted to test what dared stand above its nest. A heavy thump echoed beneath their boots. Another, like a giant heartbeat shaking the world. The soldier at the edge of the formation whispered that the ground was fracturing. A thin line of glowing heat split the earth open in front of them, red like the veins of a furnace. The crew aimed their rifles, the blue beams painting the mist. The dropship's defense system armed itself with a deep hum, plates sliding open to reveal twin cannons glowing bright. The alien ships hiding in orbit watched the feed with interest. To them, this was the moment humans would retreat, like everyone else had when this beast appeared centuries before. But the humans stood still. One of the alien commanders even laughed. That laughter died when the Terran fleet came out of the shadow. Above the dead moon, black warships moved into a new formation. No light, no signal, only silent motion like knives in the dark. One ship, larger than the rest, opened its lower bay doors, and hundreds of tiny heat signatures spread across the void like sparks. The alien observers froze. They hadn't even known humans were here with a fleet. They thought this was just an exploration team, but this was a hunt, a trap. On the surface, the beast broke through. The cracked ground exploded upward, throwing shards of rock into the air like broken glass. A long, scaled arm tore through the earth, then another, clawed and dripping molten ash. The air turned hot, the mist boiling away in seconds. The crew stood firm, shields up, visors glowing with reflected red. The creature's head emerged, horns curved like black blades, teeth shining wet in the dim light. Its eyes burned like fire buried in stone. It let out another roar, a storm of sound that could break weaker minds. The humans didn't break. They anchored their boots deeper. The commander raised his hand, and the defense grid on the surface came alive. Blue lines of light burst through the cracks in the ground. A hidden ring of turrets rose from the soil around the landing site. They rotated slowly, locking onto the massive shape climbing out of the pit. The beast tilted its head as if confused. No one had ever faced it like this. Not without fear. Not without running. But these were Terrans. Their history was written in fire and blood. The beast slammed one arm into the ground, sending a shockwave through the entire valley. Rocks lifted, dust exploded upward. One soldier was thrown backward but rolled and stood again, calm as if it were training. Their suits adjusted instantly, shock absorbers holding them firm. Above them, the Terran fleet was ready. The commander gave one short order, "Hold!" The creature opened its mouth wide, heat and steam pouring out like a furnace. The humans could feel it through their armor. One of the soldiers whispered, "It wants us to run." Another answered, "Then it's already lost." Turrets clicked as they reached full charge. Drones circled overhead, creating a silent dome of blue light. The creature raised its massive body fully above the pit now, its roar shaking the very stars. But even with that power, it didn't understand the quiet look in the commander's eyes. Humanity wasn't here to survive. Humanity was here to end this. The alien fleets orbiting the moon were silent now. Their sensors read the rising energy signatures. They saw the way the humans didn't flinch, didn't scream, didn't run. For the first time in generations, the beast wasn't feared, it was surrounded. The commander lifted his weapon, its blue barrel locking onto the creature's burning chest. Above, hundreds of Terran warships rotated their cannons toward the surface. This was not the moment of fear. This was the moment the trap closed. The beast gave one more roar, louder than before, trying to break the will of those small creatures. But they stood still, their breathing steady, their fingers ready. Humanity had faced monsters since the dawn of time. This was just another chapter. And as the first railgun turret whirred to life, the galaxy realized this wasn't a fight the beast had chosen. It was a fight humanity had already prepared to win. The air burned hot as the beast roared, shaking the ground like a living earthquake. Shards of rock cracked under its claws, smoke poured from the glowing wounds in the earth, and the night sky turned red from the heat. The humans didn't blink. They moved like one machine, silent, cold, and steady. The commander stood at the front of the formation, visor reflecting the monster's burning eyes. The beast lowered its horned head and let out a low growl that vibrated through the ground. It was challenging them, daring them to run, but humanity didn't run. They locked their boots into the cracked surface and raised their weapons with quiet precision. Far beneath their feet, deep bunkers opened like jaws. The ground trembled again, not from the beast this time, but from something hidden. A metallic rumble rolled through the valley. Then, with a sound like thunder, massive steel doors slid apart, and giant railguns rose slowly from the ground, glowing a cold, deadly blue. The alien ships in orbit watched in stunned silence. They had expected panic. They had expected screams. But what they saw was the face of war itself. Terran war machines stood like steel giants around the landing zone, their barrels tracking the beast with surgical precision. The creature paused for the first time. Its molten breath steamed into the air, its claws curling into the cracked stone. No prey had ever stared it down like this. It tilted its massive head, confused, angry, curious. The humans didn't speak. The commander raised his hand, and every soldier fell into a deep stillness, their fingers resting on the triggers like a promise. The beast lunged forward, its claws digging into the ground, its body cutting through the air like a living storm. The shockwave hit the human line a heartbeat later, but the soldiers held their ground, anchored by their training and their will. The turrets turned with smooth precision, their energy cores pulsing brighter. Then came the first shot. A blinding streak of blue fire slammed into the creature's chest, the impact sending a shockwave across the valley. The beast roared in pain for the first time, stumbling back a step, smoke rising from a glowing wound across its armor-like skin. The soldiers didn't celebrate. They advanced, step by step, every movement measured, calm, lethal. Railguns fired in perfect rhythm, their thundering shots echoing through the cracked moon. Drones swarmed the air like silent shadows, marking weak points across the beast's massive body. The creature swung its arm, smashing into the side of a turret, but another rose in its place seconds later. The commander's voice came through the comm, low and steady. "Keep pressure. Don't give it space." The beast charged again, faster, angrier. It smashed the ground, sending up walls of fire and dust, but the humans moved like water around it, shields flashing, shots cutting through the dark. One soldier rolled under a claw the size of a dropship wing, planted a charge, and sprinted back without looking. The explosion ripped through the beast's forearm, tearing scales like metal plates. It screamed again, but now it wasn't the roar of a predator. It was the scream of something that finally understood it wasn't the hunter anymore. It was the prey. Above, the Terran fleet moved closer, like wolves closing a circle. Heavy cruisers aligned their orbital cannons, their targeting systems locking on. The alien fleets that had come to watch began to retreat. They had seen enough. The stories they had heard were true. Humanity didn't run. Humanity built traps. Humanity made monsters bleed. The creature slammed its tail into the ground, creating another quake, but the humans tightened the net. Railguns roared again, the sound deep and sharp like the cracking of mountains. The commander stepped forward, visor glowing against the storm of dust. The beast locked eyes with him, and for the first time there was something behind those burning eyes, not rage, not hunger, but hesitation. The soldiers didn't hesitate. Another volley fired. Blue streaks of plasma tore into its legs, driving it back toward the pit it had crawled out of. Smoke and steam wrapped the battlefield in a choking haze, but the humans advanced like shadows in a storm, step after step, never rushing, never faltering. The creature tried to rise higher, but the circle of steel and fire was too tight. This was no random battle. This was planned. Every turret, every drone, every railgun was placed to corner the beast, exactly here. The commander lowered his hand. "Full burn," he said. The ground-based cannons charged all at once, humming like the heart of a star. The light grew so bright it painted the broken hills white. The beast let out a final furious scream, slamming its claws into the ground in rage. But the first full barrage hit a heartbeat later. The impact threw the creature backward, molten blood spraying into the air like sparks from a dying forge. Silence followed for half a second, heavy and cold. Then the humans stepped closer again, their shadows long and sharp against the burning battlefield. The beast had roared to make them fear. Now it roared in pain. Humanity didn't roar back. Humanity answered with steel. And the galaxy, watching from above, finally understood. This was not the beginning of the beast's hunt. This was the beginning of its end. The ground shook like a living drum as the beast's blood poured into the cracks of the moon, glowing hot like liquid fire. The night sky above was painted red, smoke rising in thick black ribbons, and the air was filled with the deep echo of railguns, firing in rhythm like a heartbeat. The beast stumbled back, its horned head swinging wildly, its claws tearing long trenches into the ground as it tried to stand. But the humans didn't step back. They pressed forward. Their boots moved through ash and heat like they were walking through rain, their formation tight, their weapons glowing cold blue in the haze. It was no longer the roar of a predator. It was the sound of something trapped, something realizing it had made a terrible mistake. The alien fleets in orbit were silent now. What had started as entertainment for them, a monster devouring arrogant humans, had turned into something else entirely. They had never seen humans stand this still in the face of something so big, so old. They had never seen a creature of legend pushed back with such cold precision. One alien captain whispered through trembling lips, "They're not fighting. They're controlling." On the surface, the beast roared again, forcing a wave of hot wind across the valley. Rock shattered, the ground split wider, and pillars of molten stone burst upward like geysers. But the humans didn't flinch. Their suits held, their shields held. Their eyes burned through the smoke like tiny suns. The commander lifted his arm, and every railgun on the field shifted its aim at the same time. The sound of the barrels moving together was like a sword being drawn slowly across steel. The beast lunged forward in fury. Its claws slammed down, crushing the remains of a drone, tearing apart the broken ground, but its strength was no longer endless. The charges planted earlier glowed faintly under its skin, where its armor had cracked. One soldier crouched low, whispered through the comm, "Now!" A flash of blue light ripped through the smoke as the explosives detonated in perfect sync. The beast's chest exploded with a blast of molten fire, throwing its body sideways. The roar it gave this time was not one of power. It was pain. The humans advanced faster now. Their steps matched like a single heartbeat, their breathing steady through their helmets. One of the soldiers climbed onto a piece of broken terrain, raised their weapon, and marked a glowing target on the creature's shoulder. Drones followed instantly, circling like hawks. Shots rained down with perfect aim, tearing into the beast's joints, its weak spots, its spine. It tried to swing its tail again, but the humans were already moving, rolling, sliding, hitting back with clean, measured strikes. The commander's voice came calm and quiet. "Keep pushing. It's breaking." And it was. The beast's movements lost their strength. Its roars became uneven. Its breaths turned into heavy, desperate gasps. This was no longer a mighty god of the ground. This was just a creature bleeding in front of hunters who had done this 1,000 times before. Humanity didn't win wars with emotion. They won with control. Above, the Terran fleet adjusted position, blocking every path of escape. Orbital cannons lined up their aim. The alien fleets watching from the dark started to back away. Some even turned their ships around. None of them wanted to be anywhere near the storm humanity had built. The legend of the beast was being rewritten, not as the monster that ruled this moon, but as the thing that bled at human feet. The creature tried one last desperate move. It slammed its claws into the ground and launched itself upward, its massive body twisting toward the sky. But the humans had already planned for this. Henker drones dug into the soil and fired grappling lines, glowing with magnetic force, locking onto the creature's limbs. The cables went tight, burning red in the night as the beast thrashed. Railguns fired again, cutting through its thick hide, forcing it down inch by inch. The roar it gave then shook the sky, but it was not the roar of a predator. It was a scream of something realizing it was trapped by creatures smaller than its claws. The humans pulled tighter, their formation locking like a steel cage. Dust turned the night into a storm. Fire burned around them, but they stood like statues. Then the commander gave the signal. "Drop it!" A blast from the fleet above hit like a falling hammer. The beast crashed to the ground, shaking the valley like thunder. Its horns cracked, its body slumped, its breath ragged. The humans didn't cheer. They didn't scream. They simply surrounded it in silence, weapons aimed, eyes locked. For the first time since it was born, the beast stopped roaring. It could smell something in the air it had never smelled before. Not fear, not weakness, just cold, unshakable human will. The Galactic Council, watching from distant chambers, understood then why humans were feared even when they were quiet. Because their silence was never weakness. It was the sound before the world changed. The night sky above the dying moon burned with smoke and blue fire as the Terran fleet descended lower, their shadows covering the battlefield like a storm. The beast lay half-collapsed in the center of the valley, its claws tearing weakly at the ground as molten blood dripped from its wounds. Every breath it took came with a deep, broken growl, the once proud roar now reduced to an animal's last fight. The humans stood in a tight ring around it, their armor streaked with ash, their visors glowing faint blue in the darkness. Their silence was colder than the night itself. The aliens watching from orbit whispered in disbelief. They had seen hundreds of worlds burn. They had seen armies break. But they had never seen a single creature of legend fall this way, surrounded, controlled, and crushed by the species everyone thought would run. The commander walked forward slowly, boots crunching on the broken rock. The beast lifted its massive head and met his gaze. For a heartbeat, the world went quiet. No gunfire, no movement, just a dying creature in the eyes of a predator that wasn't supposed to exist. Humanity didn't look at monsters with fear. They looked at them with calculation. Above them, the Terran fleet moved like clockwork, positioning every ship with mathematical precision. Orbital cannons rotated into place, silent but ready. The humans on the ground raised their weapons in perfect unison, barrels glowing brighter with each second. The beast tried to rise again, its body trembling, claws scraping the stone. But it wasn't fast enough. Anchor drones buried deep in the soil tightened their glowing cables, pulling its limbs back down with metallic groans. The creature thrashed once, twice, sending a wave of fire and dust across the field, but the humans didn't break formation. Their shields flickered but held strong. Its strength no longer scared them. Its size didn't matter anymore. The hunt was already over. The commander gave a single nod. Railguns around the valley powered up with a low hum that rolled through the air like the breath of a machine god. The ground shook under their boots, but they stood calm, breathing steady through their helmets. This wasn't rage. It wasn't chaos. It was the cold, controlled side of humanity that terrified the galaxy. A volley of railgun fire struck the creature's side, ripping through its armor like hide. It screamed, a sound that rattled the sky, but no one lowered their weapons. Above, the Terran flagship sent out a silent signal. A heartbeat later, dozens of smaller warships came out of the shadows, forming a steel wall around the moon. No escape, no mercy. The Galactic Council receiving the feed couldn't believe what they were watching. They had voted to keep humanity out of their wars, to call them reckless, primitive, unpredictable. But what they were seeing now was not chaos. It was strategy. It was a cage built with patience. The beast turned its head toward the fleet above, its burning eyes reflecting the light of 100 cannons. It roared again, but this roar was not to scare. It was to beg. But humans didn't speak the language of surrender. They only understood one thing when a threat stood before them: end it completely. The commander raised his arm slowly. Every cannon, turret and rifle locked onto the creature's core. The moon trembled like it could sense what was about to happen. The alien fleets orbiting began to move farther away. None of them wanted to be close when humanity unleashed what they were famous for: total, unstoppable force. The commander's voice came through the comm, quiet and sharp like a blade. Unleash. The first barrage came from the ground. Railguns fired at once, filling the valley with light and thunder. The second wave came from orbit, a rain of blue energy crashing down like a storm made by gods. The beast screamed, twisting and thrashing, but the anchors held. Its skin cracked, glowing red and then white, its body burning under the weight of precision strikes. One more wave, then another. The night turned to day, and then there was silence. The beast collapsed, its claws twitching once before falling still. Smoke rolled across the battlefield like fog. The humans didn't move for a long moment. They stood in a perfect ring around the creature's remains, their breathing slow, their weapons still hot. It wasn't victory that filled the air. It was something colder, finality. Above, the Terran fleet held its position like a wall of shadow. The alien observers didn't speak. They all knew what they had just witnessed wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It was power. Quiet, patient, absolute. Humanity hadn't just killed the beast. They had claimed the ground it stood on. And in that moment, the galaxy remembered why humans were feared. When the beast roars, others run. But when humans answer, nothing roars again. The battlefield lay silent under the broken sky, the smoke drifting slowly across the cracked valley like a dying storm. The beast that had once ruled this moon was nothing more than a dark shape in the ash, its massive body still, its molten blood cooling into black stone. The humans stood in a perfect ring around it, their armor glowing faint blue, their breathing steady through the comm. No cheers came. No shouts of victory. Humanity never celebrated in the middle of the hunt. They simply stared at what was left and waited for the silence to settle. That silence was heavier than the roar that had started it all. It was the silence of something ancient ending and something new beginning. Far above, the Terran fleet floated in a perfect formation, their hulls like black blades against the stars. Alien ships that had gathered to watch were now pulling away slowly, not daring to speak. No one wanted to draw attention. What they had seen would be spoken about for centuries. They had watched the beast roar at humanity, and they had watched humanity not just survive, but end it without hesitation. The Galactic Council chambers far across the stars buzzed with uneasy whispers. Generals, diplomats, and rulers stared at the transmission, their faces pale. For years, they had told each other that humans were dangerous because they were reckless. Tonight, they saw the truth. They were dangerous because they were controlled. Because when humanity decides to act, they act like a storm that does not miss. The commander walked forward slowly, his boots crunching on the cold, cracked stone. He stood before the remains of the creature, its eyes dimmed, its fire gone. He raised his hand not in triumph, but in signal. A drone descended from above and hovered over the beast's head, scanning the battlefield in quiet light. The soldiers lowered their weapons together, moving with the discipline of people who had done this many times before. They didn't speak. Words weren't needed. Every soldier there had felt the weight of that roar. And now they felt the silence that came after. In the distance, the alien observers whispered through private channels. Some called the humans terrifying. Others called them unstoppable. One commander of an alien fleet simply said they didn't fight it. They hunted it, and he was right. The beast had screamed to shake their bones. But humanity had answered with quiet steps, with patient traps, with steel and precision. They didn't come to challenge it. They came to end it. The commander turned his head toward the sky, where the Terran fleet's lights glimmered faintly. A coded signal flashed from his visor, and the fleet above responded with silent shifts. Ships began to pull away from orbit, moving like a single organism. No noise, no fireworks, no victory song. Just movement. The mission was complete. On the alien worlds watching the live feed, children would remember the moment the beast's roar faded into silence. Council leaders would sit in rooms heavy with fear. Old stories would be rewritten. The beast was supposed to be undefeatable, a legend carved into stone. But humans had erased that legend in a single night. The soldiers began to move toward the dropships, their steps echoing across the valley. One soldier paused for a moment and looked back at the black shape on the ground. That beast had believed it was the apex. It had roared at a species it thought was prey. But humans were never prey. They were the ones who built fire in the dark and turned fear into weapons. As the dropships lifted into the grey sky, dust swirled around the battlefield, covering the remains of the creature. Soon only the scars on the ground would remain. No statues, no trophies. Just the silence of something that thought it could not fall. The alien fleets kept their distance as the Terran warships disappeared into the dark, leaving behind nothing but silence. The Council would talk. The galaxy would whisper. But every voice carried the same truth now. When the beast roars, others flee. But humanity doesn't flee. Humanity steps forward. And when they do, even legends fall.